Hey everybody, video here for you today. This is not going to be a long one, but I'm going to document another important site in this area of the world. There are so many to talk about, but this one deserves to be reported on. There are some pretty cool things down here. This is called Çayönü, and it's right down here. This is Çayönü Tepesi right down here. You can get a faint look at the ruins on Google Earth right there. Some pretty interesting architecture. They say this place got going about 9,500 years or 10,500 years ago, depending on what website you look at. But some pretty unique buildings down here for that long ago. This place was excavated between 1964 and 1991. Spread out seasons of excavation, but what they found here was very fascinating. Let's just take a look. Here is a look at some of this stonework from the site. This place was occupied for thousands of years in deep history. Here's another look. And you notice these big flat stones. There were some terrazzo floors found here, which means there was some flat stones as big as 6 feet wide were pressed into a plaster or a cement and then polished stone floors in some of these places that go back 9,000-10,000 years. I think that's very interesting. One report says they created red and white striping based on their polishing. So I found that pretty fascinating. Here is what they call grill architecture coming from the site. These stripes of stones at the base of their places here. This is very interesting to me. Here is Mount Caracas in the background, part of the Taurus Mountains. They say emmer wheat started growing near the base of this mountain a long time ago, and all modern wheat seems to be a relative of emmer wheat first grown here. Also, they think this specific site is where the pig was first domesticated. So agriculture, raising animals 9,000-10,000 years ago. Here is a good website on Çayönü Tepesi, early places with metals. It says it is supposed to have contained the oldest native copper objects ever found. And I guess some pics are a little hard to find on this place. But it says the settlement covers many periods of the pre-pottery Neolithic time. It says it is claimed by some that Çayönü Tepesi provided the archaeological world with several firsts, including animal husbandry, terrazzo floors, which are stone pieces pressed into a cement base and then polished. Also, woven cloth was found here, some of the oldest ever found, and several female figurines. And here is a dating period. And this one goes back to, I believe what they're stating here is 10,500 BC. And the different time periods, different architectural ways things were being built. Here is a look at some of the stonework. And here is that terrazzo floor. Big pieces of stone, flat pieces pressed into a cement base and then polished were found in this building. But going on here are the different types of architecture found at the site. Here is a double-headed female figurine. What does that represent? Going down here is what they call the skull building at Çayönü Tepesi. There was couple hundred skulls and bones found, all buried together in this building. That's why they call it the skull building. The skull building, it looks like, had some pretty large pillars in it from this overhead shot. And there was at least a couple hundred individuals whose skull and bones were found in this building. Here is a look from, it looks like 1988 at the skull building. Some people were interred in here. Some people were buried underneath the floors of their homes. Going down here, it says, as far as I can tell, around 113 copper beads, hooks, owls, and pins were found at this site. They are from the grill plan phase that date to around 8200 to 7500 BC. So copper artifacts coming from over 10,000 years ago. That's what they are stating here. Here's another website I will leave below. They talk about the grill plan here at Çayönü, and this is very interesting stonework coming from deep history. It says, however, at any given layer, all buildings are arranged in a checkerboard pattern. They were alike in size, plan, and orientation, suggesting a communal construction effort according to a preset plan. And down here, it talks about the skull building and the other things here. It says, only the large building subphase and pre-pottery Neolithic occupation lack communal buildings. The earliest one, a large round structure, was followed by a large rectangular building named the Flagstone Building because of the large polished slabs used for its flooring. It says megalithic stones were set upright into its floor. The next public building is the so-called Skull Building, named for the recovery of 70 human skulls during the first exposure of building. The building was rebuilt at least 6 times with considerable changes in plan, but it held numerous human skeletons or skeletal fragments in each phase. Bones of 295 individuals were collected from the building, some placed carefully and others tossed in. The last of the public buildings is the Terrazzo Building, a large single room with inner buttresses, its floor of pinkish limestone, elegantly burnished and set into thick lime mortar. That is very interesting. During the channel building subphase, a large part of the eastern area of the settlement was reserved as an open area for special functions that are not yet understood. This was an interesting place to look into. Seems most of the stonework in history comes from between 10 and 7,000 years ago. Very interesting. But here is an old pic of one of those broken up terrazzo floors. Large flat stones as big as 6 feet across, kind of pressed or inlaid into a plaster or cement and then polished. Coming from that long ago, I don't know if I've ever heard of that before, but here is a cave site nearby. There's what they say are Roman burials in this neighborhood here. Here's a look inside the Hylar cave. They say there's Roman burials and inscriptions in here, or at least there was. Now, when I looked at this site on Google Earth, I wondered how much preservation was done here. Here's a story from 2014. Çayönü Archaeological Site in Hylar Caves face oblivion, and here is a look at some of the cave systems here, the tombs that were built in here. This is another one of those places where the history goes back over 10,000 years. Why were they doing the things that they were doing here? It's all very interesting. Unique stonework, skull buildings, terrazzo floors, copper artifacts that go back over 10,000 years. They say there is also evidence of plastering of some of the skulls here, just faint hints that they were doing that, and they compared it to ancient Jericho. And also skull modification. And does that mean skull kind of enlargement or binding? I'm just not sure, but that was mentioned in one of the articles also. So much interesting history right under the ground in this part of the world. Many sites that go back over 10,000 years. Göbekli Tepe being the most famous, but that's another video. Coming from Turkey. Hope you thought that was interesting. You all have a very nice day.